Let's dive into an incredible story that will not only improve your English, but also keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment so you never miss these amazing stories. The year is 2026, and the world is watching as tension rises in the Middle East. January is coming to an end, and the situation is growing more dangerous by the hour. A massive group of U.S. warships is moving closer to Iran, including the formidable USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier. President Donald Trump called this fleet a massive armada, and its movement signals that the region is dangerously close to war. Everyone is on edge. Inside Iran, citizens are protesting in the streets, voicing their anger against a government that has failed them. The authorities are responding with ruthless force, cracking down on their own people in a way that has shocked the world. To make matters worse, there are serious fears that Iran might be secretly developing nuclear weapons, which could escalate the situation beyond imagination. On top of that, smaller conflicts between different groups in the region add another layer of danger. All of this together makes a direct military confrontation between the United States and Iran a real possibility. These two countries have been longtime adversaries, and now the world is holding its breath. Every move is being watched closely as President Trump's powerful warships take up strategic positions, and the air is thick with tension and uncertainty. This dramatic show of military force did not happen overnight. It was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. Behind this massive deployment was a single horrific event inside Iran, one so severe it pushed the United States to respond with such urgency. What was this event, and how shocking was it that it triggered this enormous movement of warships? On January 26, 2026, a powerful U.S. naval fleet reached the waters near Iran. This fleet, known as the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, was led by the enormous nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. Alongside this giant ship sailed three other key vessels, guided missile destroyers named the USS Spruance, the USS Michael Murphy, and the USS Frank E. Peterson, Jr. Together, these ships carried about 5,000 sailors and Marines, ready for any scenario. The fleet was not just about ships. The skies above were filled with advanced aircraft, including F/A-18 Super Hornets, F-35 fighter jets, and specialized electronic warfare planes. The destroyers themselves were capable of launching Tomahawk missiles that could strike targets hundreds of miles away. The fleet took position in the Indian Ocean, fully prepared for any action that might be required. This was the first time a U.S. aircraft carrier had been deployed to the Middle East since October 2025, when a smaller fleet had been sent to Venezuela for a secretive operation. The details of that mission were still largely unknown to the public. President Trump spoke about these ships repeatedly. On January 23rd, he made his first public remarks, saying, "We have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case." He hoped that their presence alone would prevent conflict, adding, "I'd rather not see anything happen." But just a few days later, his tone became more forceful. On January 28th, he posted a striking message on social media, calling the fleet a massive armada, moving quickly with power, enthusiasm, and purpose. He made it clear that the ships were ready, willing, and able to act decisively and violently if necessary. Trump's warning was unmistakable. Time was running out for Iran, and the United States was ready to act unless Iran agreed to come to the negotiating table to reach a fair nuclear deal. Yet while the world watched the approach of these mighty ships, few people fully understood the real reason for this move. Behind the scenes, Iran was experiencing a brutal crackdown, far worse than most outsiders realized. In late December 2025, protests erupted across Iran. What started as complaints about a collapsing economy quickly escalated into widespread calls for change. Iran's currency had lost almost all its value, food prices were skyrocketing, and families were struggling to survive. Inflation had soared past 44%, making everyday life nearly impossible. The protests spread like wildfire, growing from small gatherings to massive demonstrations calling for a new government. Soon, nearly 100 cities across all 31 provinces were engulfed in unrest. The government responded swiftly and violently. On January 8, 2026, authorities shut down nearly all internet connections, plunging 85 million people into a total communications blackout. This was the most extensive internet shutdown in Iran's history, making it nearly impossible for the world to know the truth. Families abroad could not contact loved ones, hospitals and banks faced major disruptions, and security forces could operate with minimal oversight. The number of casualties quickly became a contentious issue. Iranian government reports claimed around 3,117 deaths by January 21st, including both civilians and security forces. However, leaked intelligence and eyewitness accounts painted a far darker picture, suggesting the real death toll could be as high as 30,000 or even 36,500. Reports described coordinated and brutal attacks by security forces, including the use of heavy machine guns against protesters in cities like Garaz. Doctors trying to help the injured were arrested, and many civilians suffered serious injuries, including eye trauma from shotgun pellets. Despite the blackout, information about these atrocities somehow reached the outside world, shocking international audiences and setting the stage for America's military response.
President Trump issued clear warnings to Iran. He defined two red lines: the ongoing killing of protesters and the mass execution of those arrested. He made it clear that violations would not be tolerated, stating that if Iran crossed these lines, the consequences would be severe. Trump also addressed concerns about Iran's nuclear program, reminding the world of the previous American strike against Iranian nuclear sites in June 2025, known as Operation Midnight Hammer. He warns that any attempt by Iran to rebuild its nuclear capabilities would be met with an even harsher response. Despite the warnings, Iranian officials pushed back. They refused to negotiate under the threat of military action and demanded that the United States end its aggressive posturing. Meanwhile, key U.S. allies in the region, including the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, publicly refused to allow American forces to use their land, air, or waters for a strike. These decisions were significant as they revealed that even traditional allies were deeply wary of a major conflict, potentially leaving the United States more isolated. As the American fleet advanced, Iran issued strong warnings of its own. Top officials vowed to respond decisively to any attack, making it clear that even limited strikes would be treated as acts of full-scale war. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps closely monitored enemy movements and had contingency plans ready. Allied groups across the region, from Iraq to Lebanon to Yemen, echoed these threats, signaling that any military action could ignite a broader regional conflict. To understand Iran's confidence, we must look back to June 2025, when Operation Midnight Hammer struck Iran's nuclear facilities. This attack destroyed key enrichment plants and technology centers, temporarily setting back Iran's nuclear program by about 2 years. At the same time, Iran was dealing with internal turmoil and international pressure, including military losses in neighboring conflicts and crippling economic sanctions. The country was already weakened, making the current protests and instability even more significant. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio explained that the deployment of ships and soldiers was primarily defensive, aimed at protecting American personnel and assets in the region. While no immediate strike was planned, the military was fully prepared if necessary. Rubio also acknowledged the uncertainty within Iran, noting that a leadership vacuum could complicate the situation further and that any sudden change could have far-reaching consequences. With this history in mind, the future of the Middle East hangs in the balance.
There are four main paths ahead. One possibility is a fragile negotiated peace, which would require both sides to compromise and engage in discreet talks, possibly mediated by countries like Qatar or major powers like Russia, China, or European nations. A second path involves limited U.S. military strikes, targeting specific Iranian sites as warnings, though such actions risk quickly escalating into broader conflict. The third and most dangerous scenario is full-scale war, involving the United States, Iran, and allied groups across the region, with catastrophic human and economic consequences. The fourth, and perhaps most likely short-term outcome, is a tense standoff, with neither side attacking but remaining on high alert, which would prolong regional instability and human suffering. Thousands have already died in Iran, and the current situation cannot continue indefinitely. The world watches closely as American warships remain at sea, a symbol of both potential destruction and the urgency of finding a resolution. The coming weeks and months will be decisive, determining whether diplomacy prevails or the Middle East faces another devastating conflict. So which path do you think is most likely? Will the U.S. and Iran find a way to negotiate, or is a major war inevitable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you learned something new today, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to English Highlights. Your support helps us create even more engaging stories and English lessons that you will love. Thank you for watching and staying curious.